Everyone thinks brilliance looks the same. Sharp eyes, quick answers, impossible IQs. Momo the apothecary who outsmarts nobles with poison and logic. Shikamaru the lazy genius who wins ninja battles with nothing but strategy and shadow. Two completely different worlds, one hidden truth. Their genius isn't magic, it's a method of critical thinking. They both master what schools often forget to teach, how to think and problem solve without jumping to assumptions. Not just memorization, but to question, to reflect, to solve. In this video, we're going to break down how you can study like Momo and Shikamaru. Use their secret techniques to train your mind for real-world problem solving, like SQ3R, dual coding methods, and turn your curiosity into discovery. Use techniques like Feynman technique and a retrieval practice to make memory a weapon. So whether you're decoding chemical reactions or solving calculus problems, you'll learn how to study smarter, think deeper, and see the truth beneath the surface, just like Shikamaru and Momo. Because intelligence isn't about knowing everything, it's about asking the question no one else dares to ask. Momo, she isn't the daughter of nobles, she isn't a warrior or a scholar, yet she outsmarts ministers, doctors, and nobles, all because she knows how to think. How can we study like Momo? Not just to memorize facts, but to question, reason, and solve problems with the same clarity and curiosity that keeps her alive in Apothecary Diaries. When we first meet Momo, she's been kidnapped and sold into the Emperor's palace. She's surrounded by silk and danger, a servant amongst hundreds. Her plan, stay quiet, survive, wait for freedom. But curiosity doesn't sleep easily. When royal children start falling ill, everyone blames a curse. Servants whisper about ghosts. Physicians panic. But Momo asks a question so simple it cuts through the superstition. If it's a curse, why does it only affect the children of certain consorts? That question, that small act of doubt, is the first step towards critical thinking. You see, critical thinkers don't just accept information just because it's popular or traditional. They ask, what assumptions am I making here? When you study, you might face similar traps. Not curses, but beliefs like, I'm just bad at math. History is boring. This topic makes no sense. Those assumptions, like Momo, your job is to test them. Ask yourself, what part of this actually confuses me? What evidence do I have for that belief? What could I try differently? Curiosity breaks mental walls the same way it breaks palace mysteries. When Momo investigates the royal children's death, she doesn't just guess. She observes symptoms, collects information, and pays attention to detail. She thinks like a scientist, and what she discovers, the curse, is nothing supernatural. It's toxic face powder used by the mothers. That's how critical thinkers approach learning too. They don't just read and memorize. They identify the problem in what they learn. When studying, ask, what's the main problem this text or formula is solving? Why does this concept exist? What are its limitations? Try not to cram information. Try investigating the information instead. In the palace, Momo learns fast that information is power. She listens to gossip, to footprints, to the tone of a eunuch's voice. But she doesn't just hear words, she listens for meaning. This is active listening, a core critical thinking skill. When you're in class or watching a lecture, don't just let words flow past you. Take notes on what you don't understand as much as what you do. Ask follow-up questions. Rephrase concepts in your own words. Active listening transforms noise into knowledge, just like Momo turns whispers into evidence. Remember how everyone in the palace believed the illness was a curse. That's what happens when people don't evaluate arguments. Critical thinking means weighing every claim against logic and evidence. When Momo hears a theory, she doesn't accept it until it passes 3 tests. Evidence. Is there real proof? Logic. Does it make sense? Alternatives. Is there another explanation? You can do the same when studying. If a historical claim says this outcome was inevitable, ask, what were the actual causes? If a scientific paper says X causes Y, ask, How strong is the cause and effect of the relation of X to Y? Evaluating arguments means being skeptical but intelligent. Momo often experiments on herself. She tests poison, antidotes, and medicines to understand their effects. It's dangerous, but it shows one thing. She reflects on her own process of learning. That's metacognition, the ability to think about how you think. It is the ability to understand, monitor, and regulate your own learning. By engaging in metacognition, you can identify your strengths and weaknesses as you learn and adapt your strategy to improve your comprehension and retention of information. When you study, take time to reflect. What studying method worked best for me today? Plan, setting clear goals, and identifying the best way to approach a learning task. Where did I lose focus? Monitoring, checking your progress towards a goal by asking yourself questions as you learn. What can I adjust next time? Evaluating, judging your overall performance after completing a task and reflecting on what worked and what didn't. Metacognition turns studying from a chore into a self-experiment. It's how you grow from just consuming information to mastering it. In the story, soldiers are poisoned after a campaign. The court immediately blames the villagers and plan to burn down the village in retaliation. Although conveniently simple-minded, they were wrong and would have cost many innocent villagers their lives. Momo thinks deeper. She realizes the true cause. The soldiers use local toxic plants for their campfire. Her discovery saves innocent lives. That's what happens when you learn to consider diverse perspectives based on evidence. In your studies, do the same. When reading history, look for perspectives that textbooks skip. When analyzing literature, ask for characters from different backgrounds and how they might view the same event. Diverse perspectives make your understanding richer and your reasoning stronger. Momo often tries to stay silent, but when asked, she guides others to the truth, even when nobles or officials dismiss her. When she said the soup was poison, an official drank the soup right after her and was poisoned as well. She challenged social expectations and focuses on facts. Even after Momo drank the poisoned soup, she not only realized the soup was not meant for the high consort Gao Yu, but the virtuous consort Lishu. And also, the virtuous consort Lishu was allergic to fish and was being bullied as well. That's what critical thinkers do. They challenge assumptions with evidence and observation. When you study, don't fear disagreement. If something in a lecture or on the internet doesn't sit right, investigate it. Ask why until you understand the foundation of the idea. Progress in science, philosophy, and even personal growth begins when you dare to challenge assumptions and beliefs. Now let's get practical. How can you literally study like Momo? Let's think about two techniques she instinctively uses: SQ3R and dual coding. SQ3R stands for survey, question, read, recite, review. SQ3R is a reading comprehension method designed to help students actively engage with a text to improve understanding and retention. The acronym for the 5 steps in the process introduced by educational psychologist Francis P. Robinson in his 1941 book Effective Study. For example, how Momo would approach a mystery or how you should approach your textbook. Survey. Skim through the material. Get a big picture. Momo would scan a scene before collecting samples. Scan the material. Look over the chapter title, headings, and subheadings. Note key features. Pay attention to figures, tables, graphs, and any words in bold or italics. Read the summary. Check for a summary at the beginning or the end of the chapter to grasp a meaning and the main ideas. Check questions. Briefly look at any end of chapter questions to know what key topics to focus on. Question. Turn the headings into questions. Why does this happen? How does this work? Convert headings. Turn each heading and subheading into a question. For example, the Battle of Yorktown becomes, what was the Battle of Yorktown? Create your own questions. Ask yourself what you hope to learn and how the information connects to previous knowledge. Write them down. Jot down these questions in a notebook or on a piece of paper. Gives you a checklist to follow as you read. Read. Dive deep for details. Find your evidence. Be active, focus on material, and look for main ideas and supporting details. Highlight sparingly. Highlight or underline only the most important points that directly answer your questions. Excessive highlighting can be distracting. Take notes. Write down conscious answers to your questions as you find them. Use your own words to improve comprehension. Recite. Summarize in your own words. Momo explains her finding clearly and simply. You can do the same. Summarize in your own words. Explain the content out loud as if teaching someone else or writing a summary in your notes. Check your understanding. This step is a form of self-testing that confirms whether you truly understand the material or were simply recognizing the words. Reread if necessary. If you cannot recall the information, go back and reread this section before you move on. Review. Go back later and revisit what you learned to strengthen your memory. Look over your notes, review your questions, and answer to refresh your memory of the key ideas. Revisit regularly to strengthen long-term memory. Review the material again after a day, a week, and a month. Connect concepts. Try to see how the material you just read fits in with the broader topics of the course and with information you already know. This turns reading from a passive act into an active investigation. The way Momo solves every case. Momo doesn't just memorize, she visualizes how chemicals react, how plants grow, how toxins spread. There was a case where a high-ranking official collapsed after a night of heavy drinking. Momo deduced the mystery by both tasting the drink the high official was consuming and observing the excessive salt that was inside the broken drink container. Momo then realized that someone was slipping salt into the drink at the party as either a prank or out of spite. Momo used a type of dual coding with both taste and touch of the salt. Dual coding theory is a cognitive theory that processes human processing information through two distinctive mental channels, a verbal system for words and a visual system for images. The theory suggests that information is better retained when it is represented in both formats because it creates two independent memory pathways. If one pathway fails, the other can still be used to retrieve the information. For dual coding to be effective, the verbal and visual information must be meaningful and complementary, no redundant information. For example, simple reading text out loud is not dual coding because both are verbal processes. However, combining words with relevant diagrams is dual coding because the visual and verbal cues enrich each other. Try it yourself. Draw diagrams and label them. Use mind maps for concepts. Pair written definitions with small sketches. When you visualize, you're doing what Momo does when she connects her herbs, colors, and symptoms in her mind. Ways you can combine notes with visual cues. Create mind maps or concept maps. Use these to connect central topics and subtopics with both words and graphic cues like boxes, circles, and arrows. Draw diagrams and flowcharts for complex processes. Draw a simple flowchart to show the sequence of events. For subjects like biology, sketch a diagram of a system, the respiratory system, and label the parts. Use graphic organizers, timelines, Venn diagrams, and tables are all effective ways to organize information visually alongside text. For instance, you could use a timeline for history or a Venn diagram to compare and contrast two concepts. Momo looks visuals from plants she gathers. You can use visuals in studying by drawing your own own visuals. Even if they're rough, it is more effective than just looking at existing ones. The act of creating a visual enforces the learning. Convert text to drawings. After reading a passage, close the book and try to draw a picture, diagram, or comic strip that explains the main ideas from memory. Add icons and symbols. When taking notes, use simple icons to represent key concepts. For instance, a light bulb icon could represent an idea, or a dollar sign could represent economy. When using pre-existing materials, actively connects the words and pictures rather than just passively looking at them. Annotate diagrams. If you have a diagram from a textbook, add your own short notes or arrows to explain specific parts or relationships. Explain visuals out loud. Look at a graph, diagram, or chart. Cover the verbal description and try to explain what the visual represents in your own words. This is a form of active recall that uses a visual to prompt your memory. On flashcards, include a visual cue on one side with the text on the other. This gives you two ways to test your memory. When using video lectures or presentations, such as YouTube videos, take advantage of both audio and visual stimulation. Take visual notes during lectures. While listening to a recorded lecture, create visuals like timelines or diagrams to represent what is being explained. Use presentations with purpose. When designing a presentation or studying from one, ensure the visuals add meaning and context rather than just being decorative. Avoid showing a block of text or reading it loud. This can cause cognitive overload. Why dual coding is effective. Two memory pathways storing information in both visual and verbal formats provides two potential routes for retrieval, increasing the chances of remembering it later. Reduce cognitive load by offloading some of the mental processing to a visual channel. Dual coding frees up the verbal system to focus on other details. This is especially helpful for complex material. Deeper processing, converting information from a verbal format to a visual one, or vice versa, forces you to process the material more deeply to understand it, leading to a stronger memory. To study better, you just need discipline, curiosity, and reflection. Here's how you can practice critical thinking every day. Ask why 5 times when something doesn't make sense. Keep a study journal where you reflect on what works and what didn't. Summarize complex ideas as if explaining them to a beginner. This tests real understanding. Look for cause and effect in everything, not just in science, but in people's behavior and decisions. Balance emotions and logic. Momo often appears cold, but her empathy guides her reasoning. These habits train your mind to see connections others miss. The true reward of critical thinking is not grades or status, it's understanding yourself and the world more deeply. Momo is an apothecary, and the SQ3R study technique and dual coding works for her, but what if you study academic subjects like calculus, algebra, mathematical, physics, and computer science? How does those study techniques going to help you? Another brilliant anime character's critical thinking method can help with those types of subjects. Shikamaru Nara, the Leaf Village greatest strategist, and how you can use his methods to study, think critically, and solve problems like a tactical shadow master. When you first meet Shikamaru in Naruto, he's a slouch. He avoids works, naps through lectures, and sighs like thinking is a chore. But here's the twist. His teacher Asuma finds out Shikamaru's IQ is over 200. That's genius level intelligence. But it's not just raw brain power that makes him highly effective. It's how he uses it. When Shikamaru steps into the tuning exam, he's not the fastest or the strongest. He doesn't even want to fight, but he wins battles by outthinking his opponents, analyzing patterns, asking what really happened here, and stays calm while everyone else panics. That's the first lesson of Shikamaru style learning. Intelligence isn't about knowing everything, it's about asking the right questions. Shikamaru's victory over Tamari wasn't luck. He asked himself questions no one else did. What assumptions am I making about her fighting style? What patterns can I exploit? What if the environment is my weapon as well? That's critical thinking in action. Questioning the obvious. When you study, do the same. Instead of memorizing blindly, ask, what does this formula do? What the hidden principle behind the argument? If I change one variable, what happens? Shikamaru treats every problem like a puzzle, not a wall to climb, but a maze to map. Great thinkers don't rush to answer. They define the problems first. Before every mission, Shikamaru lays out every piece of information: enemy positions, terrain, team strengths, team weaknesses. He asks, what exactly are we solving here? When you study or tackle a project, do the same. Write the problem in your own words before solving it. If you cannot, explain it simply. You don't understand it deeply, and that's where the Feynman technique comes in. Physicist Richard Feynman once said, if you want to master something, teach it simply. The Feynman technique is a learning method that emphasizes understanding over raw memorization. It is named after Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman, known for his ability to explain complex topics simply. The core idea is that if you can't explain a concept in plain, simple language to someone who knows nothing about it, then you don't truly understand it yourself. This process is simplification, and teaching helps to reveal gaps in your knowledge and solidify your understanding. That's exactly how Shikamaru thinks. He breaks complex plans into simple steps that even Choji can follow. Not because Choji isn't smart, but because Shikamaru knows that simplicity means clarity. Try this while studying. Pick a topic, say differential equations or thermodynamics. Explain it out loud, as if teaching a friend who knows nothing about it. Identify the gaps, where you stumble, where you use jargon. Go back, review, and refine until your explanation is clear and effortless. When you can explain something as easily as Shikamaru explains a battle plan, you've truly learned it. Another thing Shikamaru does brilliantly, he listens. He doesn't interrupt, he doesn't react emotionally, he observes. He takes in every argument, every angle before making a decision. That's active listening, a core part of critical thinking. When someone explains something, don't just wait to talk. Listen like Shikamaru. Take notes of contradictions, cause and effects, and evidence. Ask, is this fact or opinion? What assumptions is this person making? What evidence supports this claim? It's the difference between reacting and reasoning. After Asuma's death, Shikamaru grieves and he reflects. He replays the battle in his mind, asking where he went wrong, what he missed, and how to prevent it next time. That's called metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. When you finish studying, take a moment to test your thinking. Did I really understand this, or did I just recognize it? What strategy worked best today? What distracted me, and how can I fix that? Reflection turns experience into wisdom. That's why Shikamaru keeps getting better, not because he studies more, but because he studies smarter. When Shikamaru prepares for battle, he doesn't just memorize enemies' data. He tests himself. What if they have an unknown jutsu? What if I lose a teammate? What if the enemy predicts my moves? He constantly pulls information from memory, rehearsing scenarios until they become second nature. That's retrieval practice, one of the most effective learning methods in cognitive science. Retrieval practice, also known as active recall, or the testing effect, is a study technique that involves actively recalling information from your memory. Unlike passive study methods such as rereading or highlighting, retrieval practice forces your brain to retrieve knowledge from scratch, which strengthens neural pathways and enhances long-term retention. The more effort it takes to recall a piece of information, the stronger your memory of that information becomes once it's successfully retrieved. This process also helps you identify gaps in your knowledge so you know what to focus on next. Instead of rereading notes, quiz yourself. Close the book and recall what you know. Challenge your mind and retrieve the answer just like Shikamaru, simulating strategies, moves in his head. Perform brain dumps. A brain dump is a free recall exercise where you write down everything you know about a topic without referencing the notes or the textbook. Choose a topic, select a specific topic or a chapter you've studied. Write down everything you know on a blank piece of paper. Write down as many key term concepts and details as you can remember. Check and correct. After you've enhanced your memory, go back to your notes or textbook to see what you missed or got wrong. This highlights your weak areas. Practice with questions and tests. Treating practice questions and mock tests as a core part of your learning is more effective than using them only for assessment. Create your own questions. When taking notes, format them so you write questions in the margins. During review, use these questions as self-tests. Answer end of chapter questions. Most textbooks provide questions at the end of each chapter. Instead of just reading the questions and thinking you know the answer, write out a complete response from memory before checking your work. Use practice tests, take practice tests, or pass exams under time conditions and without your notes to simulate the pressure of an actual test. Use spaced repetition. Forgetting, then remembering strengthens memory. Instead of cramming, space out your retrieval practice sessions over time. Schedule reviews. Plan to revisit material or increase intervals. Mix up different subjects or topics during your practice sessions. For example, study chemistry, then biology, then return to chemistry. This prevents you from relying on the context of a single study session to aid recall. It's not enough to see information, you have to use it as well. Shikamaru isn't just logical, he's flexible. He learns from everyone, even those he disagrees with. When working with Tamari, who later becomes his wife, or Gara, who becomes the fifth Kazekage of the Hidden Sand Village, he considers cultural differences, alternative tactics, and even emotional motivations. He challenges his own biases constantly. That's what great thinkers do. They don't just get trapped in one worldview. When studying, compare multiple sources. Ask questions like, how would someone else interpret this? What if I'm wrong? What evidence could disprove my idea? Growth doesn't come from being right, it comes from being curious. So let's summarize your Shikamaru style of study strategy. Question assumptions. Don't accept things blindly. Define the problem clearly. Know what you're solving. Use the Feynman technique. Teach it simply to test your understanding. Practice active listening. Analyze, don't just hear. Reflect on your thinking. Learn from mistakes through metacognition. Use retrieval practice. Quiz yourself, simulate problems. Seek diverse views. Learn from every perspective. Every great strategist starts lazy until curiosity kicks in, and that's when thinking becomes your greatest weapon. Most fans assume Maomao and Shikamaru are just naturally smart, but the truth is far more fascinating. Their genius isn't magic, it's a method of critical thinking that others can learn as well. Every question they ask, every observation they make, every plan they execute is a deliberate exercise in thinking critically, learning strategically, and observing carefully. What does this mean for you? Intelligence isn't about memorization or being the fastest learner in the room. It's about training your mind to see patterns others miss, to question assumptions, to reflect on your own thoughts process, just like Maomao and Shikamaru do every day. Here's the takeaway. Curiosity, discipline, and reflection are your greatest tools. You don't need to be born a genius. You need to think like one. And that starts the moment you stop passively consuming information and start experimenting with your own mind. So here's the challenge. When you pick up your next textbook, tackle that next problem set, or dive into your favorite anime story, ask yourself, what am I missing? What patterns can I see? How can I turn observation into understanding? If you want to take your learning and thinking even further, we've got more anime breakdowns that show how to apply these techniques in real life. Click on the video on the screen next. Another deep dive from Anime Review. IQs, and keep training your mind to think like a genius. Remember, the world doesn't need more people who work harder. It needs more people who think smarter. Be curious, question boldly, and above all, train your mind like Momo and Shikamaru, because true genius is a method, not a gift.